We the People, Unit 4, Lesson 22. The guided questions in this lesson are: 1. Why is it difficult to understand the meaning of some parts of the Constitution? 2. How does the U.S. Supreme Court decide what the Constitution means? 3. What difficulties are there in deciding the meaning of the Constitution? 4. What are the methods to understanding the Constitution? 5. All the framers had different views, but how is it determined who had the correct view? 6. What types of weapons should be allowed, and at what age, based on present time and the intent of the framers? 7. What are examples of some misunderstood statements in the Constitution? 8. What should be our limitations to according to the Constitution? All these questions will be answered in the lesson. Throughout time, the meaning of words can be interpreted differently, such as the words in the U.S. Constitution. So, our judicial branch decides how the Constitution is worded. But why is it truly difficult to understand some parts of the Constitution? Well, deciding what our Constitution means is a continuous process over our history. Even justices in the U.S. Supreme Court debate what method should be used to decipher a Constitution. Many of the sections in the U.S. Constitution are clear. For instance, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. It obviously states that the lawmaking powers is to be contained in Congress. However, other parts of the Constitution aren't that clear. For example, Congress shall have the power to make laws that are necessary and proper to carry out its responsibilities. Most of the controversy surrounding the meaning of the necessary and proper clause is, what is considered necessary and proper? Well, that's for the justices to decide. So how does the U.S. Supreme Court decide what our Constitution means? There are 4 methods to solve what our Constitution means. First, just the plain meaning of the words in the Constitution. The justices consider the literal meaning of the words, and they sometimes study what the words meant at the time they were written. With this method, the Supreme Court bases its decisions as closely related to the framers' interpretation of the Constitution. Secondly, they consider the intention of the framers. This method is based on instead of the words of what the document said, the intention of the ones who wrote it. But it's extremely difficult to figure out what the framers intended. They had differences of opinion, so how is it determined who had the correct view? As well, this method of interpretation has no guidelines about what situations that didn't exist when the Constitution was written. Next off, they think about some fundamental principles of government. Principles include the natural right philosophy, constitutionalism, and republican government. This method states that justices should make their decisions on the form of these principles and values. Lastly, they look at today's social values and needs. Citizens who hold this view believe justices shouldn't ignore present-time situations and reality. An example of a misunderstood statement in need of interpretation is our Second Amendment. At the beginning, our nation seeks to have our right to bear arms because if our government became corrupt and tyrannical, we could overthrow them without weapons. However, it wasn't thought of how weapons would develop into things more advanced and dangerous. It is debated what types of weapons should be allowed to be obtained and at what age. In a 1998 Supreme Court case, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg questioned if citizens should be allowed to carry firearms on their person, as well if they should be kept in vehicles. So, depending on what you think and what others think, what should be our limitations? It is tricky to interpret our Constitution, but the job is to be safe for our judiciary. Thus, the U.S. Supreme Court uses several ways to interpret our Constitution, but the correct view isn't directly known because we weren't there in present time.